So
screen
you,
I'm going to share.
Beth, will
Okay.
your presentation include a map of the proposed bike trail?
Basically, can you see my shared screen
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So what I really was using, and again, I just kind of jumped in. Phil had contacted me, and I looked at the plan that the schematic that MJ had showed that showed basically a concept. So that's really what I was working off of. And just as like a disclaimer, I used that plan, which is on the screen, and then I used Google Maps, and I just kind of use some tools that are out there that MassDOT has on their website for kind of helping communities to like get started with these sort of things. So that's really what I did. And I want to have a huge disclaimer that, in order to get a better estimate, you really have to do a feasibility study and figure out like more of the details. But just in the realm of having like a really basic general starting point ballpark, that's what this is. And Marlo's on the call, and I know he knows that estimating like infrastructure projects, you really have to like drill down and get the details. So I want to make it very clear that I don't have those details, but I just used kind of what I could gather from Google Maps and what I know about the area in order to kind of like get a ballpark going. So that's what I'm happy to share with you. I did really try to look at the whole stretch, like going all the way from the kind of the, I guess it'd be the southern end of the Riverside Greenway bike trail, and then connecting through the old Wedgwood Gardens area. There is kind of a proposed like conceptual bridge across the Green River, and then crossing at the intersection, traveling along River and Mill Street to Mead Street, and then connecting through Mead Street. I along River Street, I did propose or use for my estimate proposing like an actual separate bike path, a side path, what you would refer to as a side path. And that's like, as opposed
Beth,
to like bike lanes on the street.
Beth,
Yes.
can you use your cursor to show the places
Yes.
on this where you're talking about?
So can you see my little hand there?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So this is kind of the Riverside Drive where the bike path is up here, and just connecting, and it does all propose like a separate. I use the linear feet of having a separate path along there, and then right here you would cross Coleraine Street, and then you'd go on to the Wedgwood Gardens property and have a separate multi-use path along there, which I use like a 10 foot, I said 10 foot. And then here is where there's kind of a proposed concept of a proposed crossing of the Green River, which again, the estimator I used asked you how wide the river is, and I used Google Maps to like figure it out. So it's not super scientific, but I hopefully got a general idea of like the crossing distance to get an estimate. Crossing this intersection, which is a busy intersection, so I specified it's a pretty busy intersection, and then
Beth,
yes.
a quick question. Do you, after the bridge, do you connect up to, is that Shelburne Road?
Yes. Although, and again, I don't know that's where you would get like, you would do kind of a preliminary design and you'd figure out more of the details. I did look at, was in Greenfield today, and I looked at that, and, I think there are some design engineering issues that would need to be addressed at that location. So again, just as a caveat of like costs, what I'm doing is just really general. River Street, I included proposing like a side path as opposed to having bike lanes on that road. I think that would be kind of the best, like more expensive scenario would be to have a side path. I'm not sure about the right of way, if there's enough space for that. But I included that because that would be like kind of a more expensive option, and a more it would yield a higher level of bicycle comfort for people using that. And then so along River Street, Mill Street, and then Mead Street down along the existing road. And then I know at the end, in the past, there has been a proposal for a bike trail through there. And I believe at some point there was some like preliminary plans for that, which I think have not been fully developed. So that's basically the what I measured and plugged into the tool. And so I'll just kind of walk through generally the steps of planning and design. Again, as my like disclaimer, you really want to do a feasibility study and kind of lay out what, what kind of engineering you're approaching with the bridge and like what kind of permitting you would need. Are there issues of, wetlands or right-of-way issues? Really a feasibility study would help you to get a more accurate estimate. So what I'm doing is very, 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 very preliminary. Then conceptual design would be the next step to get even a better idea of what your issues are. And then you could enter into like the actual design and engineering, which is when you kind of get more, you do your survey and get more information to complete some preliminary design plans. And of course, there's permitting that would be required and right-of-way acquisition. I'm not sure if there's any right-of-way, but I put it on the list because it comes up a lot of times and I don't really know at this point what your right-of-way situation is. And then the final step obviously would be construction. This picture on the right-hand side in this slide is just, I was, like I said, I was in Greenfield, so I took a picture of, this is sort of the general area where I think that you would try to maybe be crossing. I took the picture more for my own information of like knowing what it looked like and what you're up against as far as like a crossing there. So when I was doing this preliminary estimate, I broke down the kind of the project into, I saw the actual development as kind of, if it wasn't going to be approached as a whole project all at once, it seemed like it lent itself to having kind of three pieces. One, the connection between the Riverside trail, existing bike trail, to the intersection of River Street, Shelburne Road, and Route 2A. It seemed like if you had to break the project into three pieces, that was like kind of a logical piece where you could have, one phase, a second piece, and a third piece. So I broke them down and broke it into like how many linear feet were in each. The second piece was the section along from that intersection of Shelburne Road, River Street, Route 2A, to where you turn off to Mead Street, which is about 3,700 linear feet. And then the final piece was kind of the connection along the Mead Street to like Deerfield Street or the Meridian Street. And I did it for practical purposes as far as calculations, but I also felt like, honestly, I know the project it's a great project. It's a big project. And sometimes breaking into smaller pieces makes it easier to approach it. So I just thought I would mention that. One big component, obviously, is the potential crossing over the Green River, kind of near Shelburne Road, to get to the other side and connect over to Shelburne Road. That, a bridge is always a big project engineering wise, and also just for construction purposes. I identified that there potentially are 4 like roadway crossings to address. 2 of them seem more minor, easier to deal with. The one that is a pretty big one is at Shelburne Road, River Street, Route 2A, but it's signalized. So, again, that would be something that would take more kind of engineering design. There may be a few alternatives to look at. And so I just wanted to kind of lay those components out. As far as what I use to do the estimate, MassDOT has some really good bike planning tools on their website that I found useful. They have a shared use path design guide and a cost estimator. And basically it's like an Excel spreadsheet, and I plugged in a bunch of factors, and that's how I got the estimate that I got. Another resource that I just wanted to mention that's on the MassDOT website is they did a statewide bicycle plan about 2 years ago, and they created a municipal resource guide for bikeability, and that tool is really intended for cities and towns to help them with creating bicycle facilities. So I just mentioned that as a tool if anybody wants further reading or other information. So this, which I took this information and typed it on the next page because I realized that it's sometimes hard to read on a PowerPoint presentation. This was the output was I put the linear feet, the fact that there's a bridge is needed, and kind of the width of the bike path, making my assumptions. This was the output as far as an estimated cost. And I'll just flip to the next page because I think it's a little easier to read. So what it gave me, and I don't want to be the discourager, but I also want to be like honest about everything. And it's also why I said that sometimes it's easier to approach projects in pieces. And this project seems to have some nice sectioned off pieces if you wanted to take it that way. It gave, and again, these are estimates, estimate for the design costs, survey that would be involved, the actual construction of the bike path, the potential bridge structure, landscaping, traffic control, which is something that you have to include in your cost estimate, and then a 15% contingency. So that's basically kind of a rough ballpark on what you would be looking at, I think. And then this could be too high, it might be too, hopefully it's not. I feel like it's a little more on the realistic perspective and it may be a little bit on the higher side. I did try to plug factors in and didn't skimp on anything, so I didn't want to give you an unrealistically low estimate, because I think it's better to be sort of realistic about it. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, John and Beth, for your presentations. I just want to point out that both as a courtesy to our guests and because of our other agenda items, we should try to be concise with our questions. And I saw, Phil, your hand.
I just wanted to thank you guys. This is so useful. You were honest, Beth, when I asked you whether this was going to be tens or hundreds or millions of dollars. You said millions, and if we're serious about this, now we've got something to aim at. And I think if we want to do it, what we need is a team that will really push it through and get the mayor support and so forth. So if John and Beth, you're interested in being part of that, that would be great.
Carol, I saw your hand. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Carol, I'm sorry. Can I just mention one? And I didn't want to leave you hanging there. I think the next step or first step is to do some a feasibility study that takes it just a little bit further and really identifies and lays out all of those steps. And I also want to mention that I do think it's a great project. I mean, looking into it, and it got me feeling really excited about it. So